Okay. See, right. Here we are. You are my, just to orient, you're one of my private students who is on, the brave and at times treacherous track of classical occult training. And so you chose this topic, this ultra specific and delightful topic intuitively. And you did that weeks ago, maybe just shy of a month ago. And so, ideally this gets personal. So I want to know, you know, and there's no obligation, but since then, since you put it to me, what personal stake do you have in this, Karen,
I mean, I'll just start crying probably.
darling? We're off.
Um,
Yes.
I mean, the the it's interesting, okay. The last week or so I've been dissociating quite frequently throughout, or like depersonalizing throughout the day. And when I was a teenager, I was in like all the school plays and I would often play like key roles. And when I am on stage, I depersonalize. Like, is an easy way to say it, or like there's lots of layers. There's like the public private layer is part of it. Um, I just in those weeks, like when I chose this topic, there were lots of actors like coming into my, you know how I like to um do character studies.
I do.
It's
Yeah, that'll
yeah,
be relevant today.
it's like character studies. I think also it's like very relevant to, I'm writing a play, so at some point I would like actors to be involved in that. Um, and the start of I think I mentioned this already, the start of Confluence like opens with an actor. Um, yeah, there's like so many like there's like very sort of one-to-one everyday layers like that stuff, but then there's deeper layers of what is it to elegantly navigate having a public and a private persona or multiple personas, or what does it mean to um inhabit a character esoterically. It's kind of interesting, like when I was at school, we did the Wizard of Oz, and I had sprained my ankle. So I was the Wizard of Oz. That was the like part that I was playing, but I was also in a wheelchair because I couldn't walk. So it was like this, and it was like really deeply impactful for me because it's, an allegory um of false power versus genuine power, or um individual uh self-reliance. That's the word I'm looking for.
Good word. Good word. There's a little lag. I'll let you know
Okay,
just in
okay.
case, so you know. Um, yes.
Short answer,
That's all
yes.
great.
I
Yes,
mean, I could
yes.
go on. It's very
Oh, I
deep.
know.
It's
Yeah.
very
That's the yes. That's what the yes is for. Is I just kind of wanted to get a sense, even with not, having a great deal of particularity for sake of time, like how deep this goes for you and how wide. And so, um, well, okay. So, in preparing for this, Well, before I actually say anything else, I think it's very relevant to anything that I say, given my background and my concentration now, where it has been the last, 5, 6 years with anthroposophy, um, and Steiner's work, that I'm assuming, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm assuming that these plays that you're doing in school is when you were still in a Waldorf school, right?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that makes this even juicier. Um, and it's a great segue, to kind of my preface and my opening point that, as per usual, I don't think that, you know, very many, if not any of the things that I could, offer you are going to be brand new. I think that they'll very likely confirm a lot of your suspicions or things that you already know, um, about acting and about actors and those kinds of things. So, um, yeah, yeah. It's interesting to me. You said you depersonalize. That's a good starting point. Um, so my interest in what I understand your interest is, this acting is a true art form, like the dramatic arts as a true art form. So we're kind of, if we're talking about, you and me and anybody who might listen to this, modern day, we're talking about probably 1% or less of working actors who we could say, or at least I could say with confidence, are truly, um, living this art form and expressing it. And so, um, Steiner said that it was the absolute highest of art forms, the dramatic arts, for, in a sense, the very reason that you were talking about, this depersonalization. You know, when it's done truly, you are, you know, you're effectively, um, you're allowing patterns of law to be expressed through you. So you really aren't inhabiting a character at all when you're doing it in this way,
Mm,
the true art form, which is a spiritual art form, just like all other art forms in their true um, origin. Um, and, the big idea, and one of the reasons why I was so excited that you gave me an opportunity to get on my soapbox about this is, I've joked in very mixed company for the majority of my life, since I had the wherewithal to make such a joke that going to the theater is my church.
mm,
And that seems like a cheeky way to say how into film I am, but I mean it very literally because it is very literal. And whether or not, you go to see a film that has any one of these 1% of actors who are truly doing it, Tilda Swinton being one of them. And she makes that obvious if you watch her interviews. Daniel
yeah.
Day-Lewis is another one, Viola Davis, Kate Blanchett. Um,
Mm,
Regardless of if they are in that 1%, you know, um, your astral body is being shaped by this
mhm,
experience, and you are incurring and responding, and consequences are going to follow karmically,
mm,
you know, because for, the true actor, modern inheritors of mystery tradition, if you take um, an actor like Tilda Swinton, for example, which you've had homework on before you
yeah.
even, before we even did this, if you watch the lot of her films, you know, most notably or particularly notably Orlando. The other one is was it Last Lovers Left Alive? I think if I'm not botching the title. Um,
Only.
Only, yes. Um,
I, I do love that one.
I remember, yeah. If if you do a character study, as you said earlier, but, before viewing each of these, you position the lens that you're watching these films to reflect, things that are lawful. The closest mediator that we can touch are things like patterns and archetypes. And that's why you see, every single character, in every single film that's ever been made. And this includes, pre-transition from silent films to talkies, which is a
Mm.
really huge key point and anything that I have to add to this conversation. Um, they can all be traced back to an archetype. One of the easiest ways is to get out a deck of tarot cards, you know, and look at the major arcana. Where I like to drag the line further is that these patterns are not just patterns and these archetypes are not just archetypes for us to put together and see what kinds of things that we can extract and make meaning out of, and how moved we can be by seeing these patterns and the interplay and the configuration of them, blah blah blah. It's that they're laws, and that's one of the reasons that I absolutely, I'm a cinephile through and through, and I've cited on many occasions, just anytime I get the chance, but also in lots of different classes and things, that watching films has been a core part of my spiritual practice ever since I could recognize it as such, and even before. And I say that because, to throw a bit of human design in there, because I'm fresh off of listening to the first half of your new podcast, um, you know, um, being a 1-3 mansion with the cross of laws, and obviously my work really well. It's about laws all the way up, and down.
Yeah.
um I
And
am, yes,
last week, or not last week, but last time we met, you said to me that me, have a lot more freedom in what I do than what you do. And that is like
yes,
so cross of
yes,
laws. Like cross of laws is like you are governed by law.
yes, yes,
And it's
yes,
like,
I know them
but
well.
I want to say that like the richness of exchange between an Eden girl, being me in this case, not you, and a law-abiding citizen.
That's
It
right.
is, it's like it's such a it's I don't know, there's something clicking with just how
Oh, it's delicious.
compatible.
Compatible is the word, and I meant that. And I said on that same day that it's important that I surround myself with people who I understand by law have, in this incarnation, um, more freedom than you know. I derive, we'll trace this right back to acting
Yeah,
in
let's
just
do
a
it.
moment. It's there, but I derive so much um, joy. We'll use that word. It's anemic, from not just law, but being able to recognize it.
Mm, mm, mm,
So I'm constantly looking for brilliant displays of natural law. And I find the most outside of life itself concentrated in cinema.
mm.
Even if, even if, again, they're not in this 1%. Um, this is relevant. I was talking to a client the other day who is an actor as well. And she was talking about the fact that, you know, when actors are not um, working, on a film, which most of the time they aren't, they
Mm.
are just unemployed.
Yeah.
And there is there's so much to me obvious texture in that statement. You know, it's very it's these this whole thing, like I was saying with mystery schools and you know, it being, the last when you look at the stars, this is the last vestige of a public mystery school that we have, celebrity. And it's best if people are interested in the occult, if they're interested in laws, interested in reality, if they pay attention to celebrities. Because it doesn't matter that these, actors and things don't understand that they're
Mm.
in it.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is by
Yeah.
law. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, so it follows the model. You know, you you spend the majority of your time learning through life. You know, you understand, you have an innate, highly intuitive, earned, this 1%, and the people have the propensity for it that are unrecognized, um you to be a natural at it in its truest form, you would have had to, I'm going to say, we're just going to call this by law, uh you would have had to have earned, you would have to earn that in a previous incarnation. You would have, studied in a mystery school, for example, that um, had a high priest or priestess with Mars teaching, Venusian teachings, Mercury teachings. You can see a lot of, Anthony Hopkins, for example. I am so sure was, either a high initiate or a high priest in some sort of Mars mystery school. Um,
Mm.
it's
Mm.
right there
Yeah,
for
I
those
can
who have
see
eyes
that.
to see it. Kate Blanchett, Venusian, Hilda. I would put Hermes,
Yeah.
Mercurial. So
That's what.
yeah, you know, but it's just these
Yep.
these things to an esoteric researcher, these things are quite obvious. They're quite obvious when you're watching the films. They're quite obvious when you study the roles that they
Mm.
choose, or that they
Mm.
accept. Above all, you know, it's not about
Mm.
emptiness, it's about availability, you know. Um, and it's about the phases of that availability, the phases in which you are not, you know, you're not preparing for a role. You're not shooting the film. You're kind of in the shadow of the process. And that is what you need in order to have these very, very personal and confrontational interactions with these laws and patterns and things, and how they interact with you as an individual. And then, and so it goes, lawfully so, you find yourself, in a position where you, as many of these actors that I've named, have said, get out of the way
Yeah.
and allow the the current of the law via pattern to use you as possession. That's exactly what it is. And I don't care if the actor's in the 1% or they're not, they are on the spectrum of possession. That's just the fact. It doesn't matter if that gives people the willies or not. That's what you're watching when you're watching someone act.
Mm. The thing that comes to mind for me is like the requirement of fortitude, like in the unemployment time as well,
It's a
you
really
know.
good point. It's a really good point. Yeah, there is this, whether whether we're pointing to, um, actors we can name, or people
Yes.
who are, trying to, who are up and coming or trying to make it as actors. It's not, I don't know that I've ever encountered, I'm not going to say it's not there, but I don't know that I've ever encountered something, a piece of media that explicitly states that there's this certain kind of quality or fortitude, like you said, that you have to either inherently possess because of what I just said,
Yeah.
um, or that you are committed to building. Um, that is, that on the surface to the untrained eye might look like recklessness, might look like irresponsibility, might look like laziness, it can look like so many things. Um, and this goes for so many things, outside of the bounds of acting. I like fortitude in combination with the current culture, but the fortitude I think is a kind of like a the scab, not the not the point, not the wound,
Mm,
the
mm,
sacred wound. I think more so that actors are interested at the very least in truth.
yeah.
And the truth is that there's nothing more important than just living your life. There's
Yeah.
no, marker of success or role, etc. You can put anything, solve for X with anything. There's nothing more important than what life can teach you. And, it's as simple as that. Um, I think the complexity comes dancing once you really start to embrace that, you know. Um, but yeah, I wanted to talk about silent films versus talkie. First of all, I think that all the actors that, in my opinion, that I've cited are they know to some degree the things that we're talking about. They're aware of it, right? Um, they are still, they're basically still operating like silent film actors did, because what happened was when we only had silent films, it was truer to the art form because it was a simple um, biphasic experience, astral to etheric, right? And then with the introduction of, sound, talking, it became egoic, really, which is not, I'm not glazing over that. It's not a, generalized like, and then it became terrible, obviously. But that is true. That's what happened. When an actor is acting, what people, even when they're delivering lines, even when they're moving, even when they're still, the thing that makes people look at them on the screen and forget that they are actors is what's happening in their etheric body. And you can't teach that. You can coax that out of someone who's already initiated enough to have a relationship with how to do that because they've already been doing it. So all the coaxing is really just initiating them to understand more about what they already do, but you cannot teach someone how to essentially prime their etheric body in that way to be so supremely available for law and motion, you know,
Yeah.
patterns of law and motion. And so, the lines follow that. And that's one of the things I was saying that could be interesting, for us in an ongoing way is if you go into watching a film and you deliberately make it so that your focus is more on the silence when they're not talking
Yeah.
than it is when they're talking. You're going to see, you'll start to see things differently. And, you know, the veil, Wizard of Oz, of what makes it, what makes someone say, wow, that was good acting, you know, because you forgot they were acting. You believed what you were seeing. And
Mm.
it's basically how primed is your etheric body and how refined is your astral body. Because if you don't have a refined astral body, then there's no way that you can be in this 1%. You would attach too much personal significance to everything that you feel.
Mm.
You know, you have to be able to hold full spectrums of emotion. That's the bottom of the barrel. I mean,
Yeah.
exalted things that go so far beyond emotion, and
Yeah.
and have your astral body, your human personality complex where emotions are concerned, be placid.
Yeah.
Otherwise it would destroy you, and it has. We've seen that happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like that's the destruction side of it is that's like part of what I'm interested. Well, I guess it would be clearer to say that I'm interested in the opposite. I'm interested in the people that maintain individuality or, you know, what did you use the word intact, that remain intact through that. And also like from a writing perspective, for like how is I guess it's just the same in terms of facilitating that. Like if you're writing plays or writing films, you could write in such a way that would support true acting or make it almost impossible.
What a wonderful thing that you just said. That, I think, that is fascinating that you're thinking about that. um I think I agree with what you're saying, and I think just that as a question or as a topic is extremely complicated in a great way, because it starts to fray at, let me put it like this. So if you're the one writing the play or writing the script, right, or the screenplay, and you have in your mind these imagined actors, right, or some, you know, peripheral image of them. When you're receiving and putting yourself in a position to be available, to construct that work, and you have this idea of the actors, which is a different role in this ritual, right?
Yeah.
When the actors come in, going back to these archetypes, right? There is going to be, inevitably by law, there's going to be this interplay between basically these kind of, egregores that you've
Yeah.
built, you
Yeah.
know, and them, and what they, and then, you know, the law, so it's really all quite interesting the more you think about how
Yeah.
far on the dial you want to turn up your awareness of making the sausage as you're making the sausage as you're aware you're making the sausage. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
really fascinating question, but it's also, interesting to me to I've never written a play. I've got playwrights in my family, but I know you're writing a play and you're asking this question. So, that is it's a fun one. I think we should really, stick a
Yeah,
pin in that one.
because
Yeah.
it's like as we're talking, I feel like it's it's easy to think of the character as the vessel, but the character is more like the pipe, and the
Yeah.
actor is the vessel. Um, and yeah, it's interesting that you said about Tilda Winter and being mercurial and that, that resonance of um the process of receiving a message, but then also at the same time understanding that the message, and I feel like this is exactly the point that we kind of left off with the subsidiaries. It's like understanding the that in a in a super sense, symbol is sort of beside the point, or it's like it's not beside the point,
Right.
but kind of.
Yes. Yeah. It's still technically an abstraction,
Yes, 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 yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
A-
You know,
And oh gosh, how beautiful to think about um silence as the primary. Oh gosh, like just that, it makes me cry.
yeah. As the primary of
Yeah.
so many things in the system. Yeah.
And I put it in the new website a bit, but I've been thinking about reverence a lot lately, so it's very relevant that you bring in cinema as church. And I feel like another layer of wanting to explore this is um when I've been to plays that are um I don't know if yeah, sacrilegious or without reverence, without care, without artistry in the true sense of the word. It um it really is like torture to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it really is going
Yeah.
to a bad play as some of the most like hurtful, painful experiences of my life. And I'm sort of I think that's something to take seriously and to give purchase, or like to give to what's the word? Like follow through on that.
Yeah.
Like some
Yeah.
people would feel that way about bad food or
By the way, about bad singing.
bad singing, yeah, or bad fashion.
Yeah. Well, you know, we can't talk about any of this without talking about the audience. Audience is who closes the circuit in this
Yeah,
ritual. Yeah. Because, in traditional mystery schools, you know, the person who's being initiated were the ones who were witnessing it. They were witnessing the mystery. They were witnessing the ritual. So, in order for them to witness it, they had to agree. They had to agree to we'll just say agree to witness, because I think in some of the highest, higher connotations of that word, it's sufficient. But the reality is that that's what's happening every time we, we observe, you know, this media. Um, and it does it does affect our astral body, as I was saying. It shapes it. It really does. It affects our karma. I think these are maybe unsavory truths, but it's just the law. The powerful position that we have as, members of an audience witnessing a film, um, or a play, um, is what do we do with the affects of it? You know, because you've basically got three options. You know, if you see something and you recognize, as you were saying, that it was made with reverence, to some degree, and that doesn't always mean that it looks wholesome. It means it's true. It's made, you know, in the service of truth to some
Yeah.
degree.
Yeah.
And you observe it as, as a witness, you're basically saying, um, you're agreeing to some small fragment of initiation because you're remembering something. You're remembering something about your own soul to, keep it concise.
Mm.
And so you're basically saying, I am agreeing that I remember this about me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, the
Yeah.
position that I have is how much I'm going to allow it to dictate what I do with that and how it changes me.
Yeah.
And then you have the second option, which are people who, even if it doesn't matter if it's the most, beautiful piece of cinema in the world, if they refuse to, if they mock it, if they push it away, if it makes them uncomfortable, if they refuse
Yeah.
their position as witnesses, they're still just saying not yet. They're delaying the inevitable fragment of initiation that they have already agreed to. And then the
Mm.
third option, you know, is, just blatant, just a variation really of the second one. It's just blatant vileness on both sides, like a deliberate, you know, production, and a deliberate agreement to witness it as someone who is, averse to reverence. And
Reject or like rejecting reverence.
yeah, like, people who are sick, and people who make films that are sick. The short answer for that is that, you really do, that fragment of initiation becomes a kind of small karmic debt.
Oh, I want like a whole class. I want a whole nother class on the horror genre now.
Well, that is really my specialty. So, so I'm
I
like
feel like,
trying to keep it, so, like, I know we have 10 more minutes left, and I'm like trying to,
yeah,
condense this, but
I feel like
still,
Jack would want to come sit in on that as well. Maybe we can do that in
I'd
June.
love that. I mean, it's right. They're called stars, It's really
Well,
not
yeah.
that hidden. Not to open a whole other can of worms, but
Hmm.
I'll let you drive the last few minutes. Where do you want to drive this ship? Because I'll just,
I
yeah, drive it into
I
the. see.
I'm down for that. Drive me
I
into
know
the
if I
sea.
could, I could. I've only penciled in
Um,
1 hour. Yeah.
is there I guess like the homework kind of writes itself.
Oh, that was something you said. You said you were interested in film recommendations, right? Is that, remember that
Yeah,
right?
I did say that, yeah. Like with
Oh.
this, now that we've had this,
Mm,
now that we're going and bringing in like the planetary um flavor, like, okay, this is relevant to me because I have noticed that the first 60 years of my life and also a lot about my chart is Saturnian.
mhm. Yeah, I was seeing that in in our Notion.
And so like Saturnian, if we're thinking about archetypes in film, I definitely see I can like every time you're saying like Anthony Hopkins, Mars initiate, yes, 100%. Tilda Swinton, Mercurial, yes, 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 like yes,
Saturn.
it's so there. And
Hmm.
and it's an interesting I don't know if it's a fork in the road, but it's like a slight adjustment in my orientation has been happening towards like more Capricornian pursuits or like more Saturnian ways of thinking about uh it's kind of weird. It's like those things that are, you know, you're um you're steadily building, 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 but what that kind of orientation actually does is put you in the present because you're always in the present putting in the repetitions.
You
And
can't build if you're not in the present.
yes, and like what is okay, so what is that, yeah, what would it be to really take seriously that Saturnian orientation?
You have no idea the gifts you bring to my life, Karen Lies. Ugh, ugh, my God.
Make me
First, you
cry.
asked me to. That's what I do. I make you cry. That's the exchange, I think.
Well,
Um,
my tears are a gift.
oh, I know. It's just celebrations all around.
Receiving on both sides.
Yes. Totally, totally. Oh man, I live for this.
And oh, I'll
Yes.
listen.
No, no, please, please, please.
I think also specifically for me, it has to do with like the public private is another layer.
Totally.
Okay.
Okay. Well, 2 points. One, of course, I've got some things just off the top of my head, but I also want to live into this a little bit because I've seen
Mm-hmm.
a lot of shit. So I want to give there also, their space for something to re-enter my mind that might be even more, you know, um, even better. But I
Precise.
mean, precise, yeah. Whose word is that? Who cares about precision? That's far away. Uh,
Darling.
slipping away. I mean, have you seen Persona?
I don't think
Ingmar
so.
Bergman?
No.
Oh my God, how exciting. That is definitely that's one of my favorites of all time. Definitely Harold, I'm not alone in that. Uh, um, but more to the point, checks all of those boxes. Um, and some more. Um, I would also, not so much with private and public, but definitely with Saturn. You know, like what I'm talking about with Anthony Hopkins. Anthony Hopkins is to Mars. I would say Tarkovsky is to Saturn. Um, and I would even say the same for Hodorowski. You've seen the Holy Mountain. Um,
I feel like have I seen the Holy Mountain? I feel like I've
see
seen part of it.
I mean, I think, with like Tarkovsky, Bergman, Hodorowski, like when you say Saturn, that's what I mean. Seventh Seal, chess game with death, Saturn. Um, but I, my sense and what I want to give, the thing that I'm like, yeah, wait for the real precise one, is that you're looking for something fairly modern, you know, that
Yeah,
really, you
yeah,
know, captivates this triangulation of private, public, Saturn, and in the middle, like I would say, like, identity, things like that. Persona, you mentioned that. We've come full circle in the beginning. You mentioned persona.
yeah.
Um, so I mean, you can't miss persona, in my humble opinion. You can't go your whole life without watching that.
Okay.
God,
Okay, Persona.
yeah, yeah. Hmm. I mean,
Anything else?
girl.
To be
Um,
continued.
yeah, no, not for now.
Uh,
I'm gonna catch a real big modern fish is what I'll do, and
yeah.
I'll let you know when that lands.
Okay.
Um, I've got the
I feel like this might, you know how we did, you know how the subsidiaries occupied like a 6 month chunk.
yes.
Let's
You
This is our 6 month chunk, okay?
yeah. Wait, what? Wait, what? Am I
We could
going
do
to?
acting for 6 months.
Darling, this is your
10 years.
show. Okay.
Yeah, so I
Yeah.
want horror in June.
Yeah. All right. You got it. You got it. We can do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's such an intro because yeah, there's so much to say to
There
put it in an
is.
ocean.
Yes. Yes, there is. It gets better. Horror is, yes, my first love when it comes to film. Yeah.
And the it makes so much sense with this esoteric overlay
Yes. I
and
can see.
and taking
Yeah.
it in and being witness and all of that. And I think also like with it's kind of interesting like permeability mausoleum permeability but also stickability, you know, like you're talking about actors.
Oh, yeah.
It's when it's really operating correctly, it passes through you and it maybe changes you, but then you return to who you are.
Absolutely. Yes. Well, darling, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Seriously,
T
I can't wait for
T
more.
TBC.
BBC, darling. I'll see you soon.